Welcome to the Thursday edition of the 14. I've got Blake Lovell with me. I've got Barry Allen with me. I'm Chris Lee, the host here. We are going to talk baseball and basketball, but first let's go to basketball. And Blake, a lot of stuff has happened in the last couple of days with rules changes, not just transfers, but rules to the game itself. I guess let's start with the transfer issue. The NCAA has done what we thought it was going to do for, roughly 6 months now, and it's opened it up to where everybody can get a one-time exemption on transfers, I believe is the way it was stated. I want to get both your thoughts on that, starting with Blake.
Well, I mean, like you said, we've already treated it as such. I think in the back of our minds, we've already known this was going to be the situation. So I don't really know that for me, I mean, it changes that much just based on, we're already seeing the ramifications of it just based on the transfer portal. I think a lot of people already knew that this was going to be the situation and how it was going to unfold. I think that's why you've seen so many transfers in basketball. Again, that number, we got to remember, like, this number is just astronomical at this point. And so I can't say I'm surprised in any way, shape, or form. We knew this was coming. And now I think it's just a matter of seeing, okay, how does this affect some of these maybe mid-major, low-major type schools? But I also think you're also going to have situations where, let's say the second guy off the bench at pick your school, paying a power conference, he's going to be, to me, much quicker to leave knowing that he can go play at, pick your mid-major school and play 28 minutes or 35 minutes a game and get, 20 points a game. I just think it's going to go both ways here. But again, I'm not surprised in any way, just because we pretty much knew this was coming. It's going to change the way I think that coaches have to approach certain situations, just knowing that pretty much at any time, a player can just up and leave. And if he still has that one-time transfer exception, he's free to go wherever he wants and have a chance to go right into somewhere else and play. So it's going to be interesting moving forward, but I don't know that it's something that I don't know. I just don't think it's going to be anything more than what we've already seen. I think it's the trend's already there. This just kind of gives you the language in that, okay, now I know I'm going to transfer, but now I know I don't have to sit out and I can just go right in and play right away. So,
Barry Allen, safe to say this is not your favorite rule change.
No, it used to be that way in college baseball, and it was a mess. Basketball and football never really conformed to that, but baseball in the 90s, they did have the one-time transfer with no penalty rule, and rosters would turn over crazily, obviously, because in baseball you're dealing with 11.7 scholarships, which is ridiculous that's all you get, and you're trying to split dimes and nickels for people and go, well, this guy can get books and this guy can eat lunch and this guy can have dinner and this guy can have tuition. And, we get 4 guys into school that way. And it's a little bit more equally distributed now and proportion now. But for the most part, no, I don't care for this. And you got to change. I mean, it is what it is, but it's not one of my favorite rules. But it is what it is. And coaches and myself, we just have to live with it.
Well, Blake, that's not all. Other rule changes that don't have to deal with transfers, but stuff on the floor, including some modifications to the travel rule, among other things.
Well, let's run through these. Boy, this is going to be fun because I can tell you guys, I'm looking at this more. We talked about it before we started recording, but some of these are terrible. Like, some of these rule changes are just awful, and I don't know how they're going to improve the game, but we'll see. Some of the ones that probably stand out, I think, for most people, the resetting of the team fouls, the 10-minute mark of each half. So basically, you begin the double bonus on the 5th team foul of each 10-minute segment. It would eliminate the 1-and-1. So I don't know. Like, that's it's an interesting one, but I don't know completely based on how they approach that. I know a lot of people have kind of advocated for just getting rid of the 1-and-1 and doing it in this way. To me, I'm always like, well, why aren't we just playing quarters at this point? Because if we're going to make all these changes, would it not just be easier just to play 10-minute quarters and do it that way? That's just my opinion. I know the tradition of the game and all that, but I just don't. I don't know. I feel like that's one of those things where we're making all these changes when really it only needs one just to kind of get to the 10-minute quarters and maybe do it that way. So That's one that stands out to me. Speaking of fouls, this is something. Adopt a modified 6-foul rule with the following provisions. Now, get ready to just have your head spin here. There are 4 different provisions here, and I don't even know that I can go through the entire of this and even make sense of all of this, because to me, this just seems like way too much work, and you're going to confuse a lot of people if you go with this modified 6-foul rule, because the provisions are that a player may not commit more than 3 personal technical fouls in any one half. I guess that's a penalty disqualification. A player may commit 3 personal or technical fouls in the first half and 3 in the second half. In this case, the player is allowed 6 fouls before being disqualified. Number 3, a player may commit 2 personal technical fouls in the first half and would be disqualified on his 4th personal technical foul in the second half for a total of 6 fouls. And number 4, a player may commit 0 or 1 personal technical fouls in the first half and would be disqualified on the player's 4th personal technical foul in the second half. See number 1. Do you make any sense of that?
Is the video on your end?
No.
But because if it were, you would have seen the look on my face.
Like, seriously, how are we going to explain all that in the middle of a game?
But wait, they use disqualification, but then they say,
that's a terrible one. Let's just call it what it is.
What they're saying is, once you get to the 3rd foul before halftime, then you can't come back in the first half, but you can start the second half. That's what I say. If you pick up your 3rd foul with 9 minutes to go in the half, you're out of the half, but you're not out of the game, and you can come back and start with 3 fouls and get 3 more fouls. That's what that sounds like to me.
That's so ridiculous.
I have a theory on the purpose of this, guys. Okay,
and who's going to? I guess that puts the onus on the official scorer. Being an official scorer, that intrigues me. And the foul shooting, we talked about this off the air or before we started the podcast. They should just go to 4 quarters like the women's team, because the women's game is much cleaner, faster game now. We've already established they've eliminated 5 media timeouts in playing quarters, because now you take a media timeout at the 5-minute mark of the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter, and you get the bonus timeout on the first team timeout in the second half. That gives you 5 media timeouts as opposed to 9 in the men's game. And it's been a while since I've watched a women's game that ran over the 2-hour window. I mean, those games are quick and they're cleaner. I mean, you get some games that aren't because, UConn's playing Rutgers. Well, I mean, that's a bad example, but because they don't foul. But, when you're down 87, you don't foul in the fourth quarter. But there are some games that drag on a little bit. But some of these games, it's a lot faster and it's a much cleaner game. And I kind of wish the guys would go to that myself. But the 6 fouls, they used to do that in the NBA. Now, if they're going to do that, Blake, why don't we bring back the old 3 to make 2?
That's what I mean.
Just eliminate bad free throw shooting. You get 3 shots. You got 3 chances to make 2. Let's go.
I don't know here. Like, these are, Chris, you can weigh in on that one, but I just think that's way too much to try to, I don't know.
Well, here's my theory, okay? You have the Will Wade situation. You have the Kansas thing where you have a couple of coaches that basically got caught red-handed and have been punished. I think this is the NCAA's way to remind us that they're still all in charge.
Well, here's another one that I don't particularly love.
That's a joke, but I don't know. I don't know why you mess with this.
All right, what about this one? Award possession of the ball to the defense when they create a help ball situation. Is that not an awful potential rule? Automatically, you're just telling me that all anyone has to do is go up and basically, they could grab and do all this other stuff, and if official sees it as a jump ball, they automatically get the ball. Is there not some problems there?
Didn't it used to be that way? Or no, then they jumped,
No, they
right?
would jump. They would jump, which was always interesting when you had the 5'11" guy going against the 7-footer. I mean, that rewarded good defense, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that I hate that tremendously, because you play in defense. I mean, you're trying to force a turnover or whatever, and you're playing defense and you force a hell ball. I mean, I guess
let me just ask the question. What is it that was not working that they're trying to address
That's
here?
exactly what I was going to say. With all of this stuff, that's my question is, if you're doing this to improve the game, you have to prove to me that something that you're implementing is going to improve the game. I don't know that some of these that we've discussed thus far, and there's going to be a couple more I'm going to mention here in a second, I don't know that they're improving the game and pushing the game forward to me.
I think that's fair. I agree with you on that completely. I think that's fair.
Let me throw something. I've never heard this brought up, but instead of a certain number of fouls per half, what if you just said once you get above a dozen fouls per game, or 14 or 15, that's when you start shooting 1-and-1s?
Yeah, I mean, that could work.
I mean, that would be a whole lot less confusing than this, right?
Right. That's the thing.
That would also save you some time at the end of halves.
I
mean, there's strategy at the end of the games when you get a lot of fouls, and I get that. And I don't want to see that taken out of the game. But, what's the sense at the end of the half other than just dragging it out longer? I mean, if speed of the game is an issue, then make it just a cap on fouls for the game or something, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm that's my thought on all of this stuff is what are the problems that you're fixing here? And I think that's what I would like to see is to give me a clear idea. For example, here's the other one. Eliminate the 10-second backcourt rule. How does that improve the game? Like, to me, what does that do? What is the significance of that? You have a 30-second shot clock. What does eliminating the 10-second back rule do other than potentially allow teams to basically just, hold the ball in the backcourt for longer? Like, how is that pushing the game forward? I don't understand.
Right.
So
wait, did they put that in there too?
Yeah, eliminate the 10-second backcourt rule. That's one of the proposed changes. So
do they do that now still in women's basketball? I know at one point there was no 10-second backcourt violation in women's basketball. Is that?
I think that's still how it's played.
I think it is.
Because to me, this just all this does is reward offense, right? Like if you're pressing, what's the point? I mean, it's gonna I get it. Like, teams will still press, but isn't that one of the reasons that you try to press is to either create a steal or maybe get them in the 10-second? Which, again, the percentages here, like, how many 10-second backcourt violations do you see a game? Not many, but still, like, to me, I don't understand it. Like, I don't. Again, if you're proposing rule changes, to me, you should only do that if you're trying to fix a problem that clearly exists, and I don't know how that one is an issue. Again, there's more here. I'm gonna throw a couple more your way. The 5-second closely guarded rule, eliminate that. I mean, I don't, that's an interesting one to me, but again, I don't know. I don't feel strongly one way or the other on that one. Let's see what else we've got there. I mean, there's a lot here, and that's why we're talking about this, but limit the number of timeouts that may be called by any one team in the last 2 minutes of the second half or any overtime period to 2. I'm not against that, I'll tell you that. But I'm sure coaches aren't maybe thrilled with it, but I'm not against limiting the number of timeouts and stoppages in the final 2 minutes of a game that sometimes can last longer than the previous 18 minutes and a half. So that's just, I don't know. Those are some of the ones to me that stand out. I think that you mentioned the traveling call. Adjust the traveling rule to allow a player to take 2 steps after lifting his pivot foot, which would make moves such as the spin move, Euro step, and step back shot legal. So those are just some of the ones that I saw that kind of particularly stood out to me. Oh, and the permit a team to decline free throws in the last 2 minutes of the period, or the last period, or of any overtime period, and elect to take possession of the ball for a throw-in instead. I don't love that one either. So
my head is spinning.
That's what I mean. Like, these are, and look, here's the thing. They're not gonna, all these are not gonna pass. Like, these are just proposed rule changes. And that's what Matt Norlander noted in his tweet, is that these are just possible changes. Like, the chances of all these going through, very, very slim. It's not gonna happen. But some of these probably will go through and be implemented, in terms of, how they could be used next season. So there's a lot, and look, I didn't even mention all of them. There are more, and I'll wrap up with my favorite one here. Allow laptops, tablets, or similar devices in the bench area for coaching purposes, and as I joked to you guys, that would allow teams that are up 30 or down 30 with 5 minutes to go, coaches can check their email, work on some recruiting stuff on their laptops while the game is going on. I'm not against that either. Be very productive, all about productivity. So,
does that include players?
Wait, how about this? How about you got some players on verbalcommits.com in the final 5 minutes of the game? They haven't played the whole game, and it's like, let me see who's out there with this one-time transfer rule. So
yeah, kid on the bench at the end of the game, can tweet out, I'm hitting the transfer portal. Please respect my decision. No interviews.
Yes, I would like to.
Or maybe post to his Instagram during the game. Why not,
yes,
right?
That'd be great. Coach getting a tap on the back. Hey, your eighth guy on the bench there just said he's transferring. He went to the locker room.
You might want to get Johnny in the game before this gets out of hand.
And the coach emailing on the bench. Hey, honey, we're down 48. Where do you want to have dinner? I'm out of here. I'm tired of watching this.
I want that one to get past. I want that one to go through. That may be one of the few, but I'd love to see that. So
where's your coach? Well, he met his wife for dinner. And by the way, 2 players on the end of the bench transferred to William and Mary and North Dakota State at the end of the game. So we're good. We're all good.
Seriously, I don't have a problem with rules changes. I think they're necessary to make the game better and eliminate things that are making the game slow or ugly or whatever. But I would just like to know, and maybe these are things that were just thrown out by individual entities, but it would be nice to kind of get an idea. I think that if you're in the room voting, before you vote on anything, you need to say, okay, guys, what are we trying to accomplish with all this? And then in light of that, it makes it easier to determine what you need to do or not to do, rather than just cobble together something and all of a sudden you've got left field at Duty Noble Stadium, if that makes sense. Barry will get what I mean there.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. Like, what do we always see before the season? You see the NCAA put out those videos for, like, referees and stuff showing these are the rule changes that we want to implement this season. Like, these are the things we want to focus on. To me, if you're going to make some of these rule changes, like, give us some video. Like, show us the reason why we should change some of this. Like, give us examples. Like, that's all. And look, is everybody going to watch it? No. But I still think it's something to where show us why, or give us some reasoning or evidence that these are things that are going to improve the actual product on the floor. And I think with some of these, yes, I'm probably a little too harsh on some of these potential changes, but I just think some of them are not really fixing anything. And I don't really know that it's doing anything more than maybe offering a little bit more confusion, which I don't think is what you want to do, just based on how you're going to implement your game and the product that people are going to see, night in and night out. So,
Blake, a couple more minor things with the transfer portal. Andre Hyatt from LSU is gone. Torrance Watson at Missouri has gone to Elon. I guess nothing else much more to mention there.
No, not right now. But as we said, probably by the time we do our next podcast, there will be 50 more and probably others to talk about. So, yeah, not really a whole lot. I mean, the Andre Hyatt thing, LSU, I don't think was that surprising, as we talked about with them getting Xavier Pinson and having Seneca Knight there. That's one of those things where you probably look at it and playing time probably becomes harder to get with those two guys likely leading them in the backcourt. So, not a lot else happening in the portal.
Barry, I guess they've been listening to our podcast in Oxford. Ole Miss has made a rotation switch. We've got Hoagland, Nikhazy, and McDaniel in that order, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What effect does that have on things for the Rebels?
Well, Diamond has struggled pretty much all season for the Rebels, and I think they're just trying to shake things up. Even some games, that they won, he didn't pitch great. When you look at his numbers, he's got 8 starts, 42 hits in 36 innings, 594 earned run average. Walks are kind of high, 14. So just trying to shake things up a little bit, see what happens, in that end. They've lost 2 series in a row, and, they're on the road for the second time in 3 weeks against Mississippi State. So, they're going to go with McDaniel, who's 4-0 with a 2.90 ERA. He's made 11 appearances and 5 starts. He still has 10 walks in 31 innings, but he's only allowed 28 hits and 38 strikeouts. So just maybe a, clear your head kind of weekend for Derek Diamond and just shake things up a little bit, since you're playing your arch rival, who you've really kind of struggled with recently, and just kind of see what happens there. But, probably a move that's not shocking to anybody that follows Ole Miss, watching, them play the last, several weeks.
Barry, we start SEC play tonight. We've talked about pitching at Alabama and Auburn for various reasons. Auburn has just had a revolving door, and it had struggled to find capable starters. Cody Greenhill's done a really good job for them, by the way. Has been had a very underrated season. We don't talk about Auburn a lot because it's had such a bad year, but shout out to that kid. He's really pitched well, even though he's pitched out of the pen a lot of his career. The rotation thing is worked for him. And Alabama, Connor Prelip, the school announces coming back. What do we expect in that series, and especially from the pitching end? And by the way, that one starts tonight, Thursday night at 7 Central.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, series. One that Auburn's kind of dominated the last 2 years. They've won 5 out of 6. And I think they've outscored Alabama like 77 to 20 something in those games. The last time Auburn came to Tuscaloosa, former Auburn assistant Brad Bohannon was now the Alabama head coach, and they swept Alabama in 3 really, really, really ugly games where they hammered the Tide pretty good, sweeping Alabama for the first time in Tuscaloosa since 1976. And then you kind of go back and look at 2017, one of the most dreadful years of any team in SEC history. Alabama finishing 5-24-1, and 3 of those 5 wins came at Auburn. So if you're Alabama and you're Brad Bohannon, because Brad Bohannon was in that Auburn dugout that day, and he's looking at a 1-11 Auburn team and going, they're really not that bad. And so he's got some experience. I think that'll help Alabama a little bit. He's got some experience in being on both sides of, bad series. I mean, he got swept as an assistant at Auburn and swept as a head coach at Alabama in this series. And he can take his team today and go, hey, look, when I was at Auburn in 2017, we were way better than Alabama, and they came in here and they kicked our tail 3 times in a row. And this team can win. Brad Bohannon's telling his team, this team can beat us. And he said on his call yesterday, you look at, they're 1-11, and I think 9 of their 11 losses were 1 or 2 runs, and they got a shot to win any game Cody Greenhill pitches. I mean, they absolute legit SEC guy, absolute chance to win any game he pitches, and he's pitched very well, and they're in every game that he plays, that he pitches. They're not so much in the others. So Tyler Rass has pitched really well. I think it'll be a really good matchup tonight. Jack Owen is going against Dylan Smith tomorrow, and then Jacob Gonzalez is going against Connor Prelip on Saturday. I think that's more of a Prelip / Antoine John game. Prelip to me is, I got to think, 40 pitches at the most, 40, 50. I mean, a couple of innings, get his feet wet, get him back in there. But the key for Alabama is he's in there now, and he can pitch week 6, week 7, week 8, 9, 10. And now they got a shot, with Ross pitching the way he did. Dylan Smith has pitched well, but the last 2 weeks he struggled. But, when you look at pitchers, the bottom line for a pitcher is you wins, and Dylan Smith's got 0. And so they don't score for him. They did score for him last week, but he couldn't get the Aggies out. So, and then Antoine John, he may be the odd man out. I mean, I don't think you take Tyler Ross out of the lineup, out of the rotation at all. He's pitched way too good. And if he becomes now your Saturday guy and Dylan Smith becomes your Sunday guy, that could be a little bit different animal for Alabama. They could be a very, very different team. So interesting series starting tonight in Tuscaloosa. 2 longtime rivals playing each other. Alabama, you figure with momentum, 4 straight wins coming off a sweep of the Aggies, should have the upper hand and win. But we harken back to 2017. The team that has probably no business winning can win in baseball and win in this series. And at 1-11, Alabama's going to have to play really well against this Auburn team to win.
Okay, Barry, I want to throw some stuff at you here. I maintain Auburn is not a bad baseball team as much as it is an unlucky baseball team. And I know the pitching, right? But let's also consider what league we're in and what these teams go up against every night. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. Auburn has taken a disproportionate share of losses, I think, to how good it is. And this team, remember in 2019, the last full season we had, we all thought Auburn was going to be pretty good. And they had some pitching issues. with their ace hurt. And then you had the guys like Steven Williams and maybe Judd Ward, who we knew could hit and just didn't hit all year. And I thought if there was any team in the league heading into postseason that was going nowhere, it was Auburn. Well, Auburn got hot, and all of a sudden, the guys who didn't hit all year hit in regionals and super regionals. And next thing you know, you look up and they're in Omaha, and frankly, if it weren't for a defensive meltdown at third base, would have won a game or two there. But I look at this and I'm just thinking, they've got good players. They've got Ryan Bliss. They've got Tyler Miller, Rankin Woley. We talked about how the left side of their infield might be the best in the league. But you look again, and it's Williams and Ward aren't hitting. You look at batting averages on ball and play. Williams at a .198, Ward at 205. That's almost unheard of in college baseball. It points to some bad luck, but just as amazing kind of seeing this play out for Auburn in the regular season the way it did in 2019 for a while, except worse this time.
Yeah, they've had their share of unfortunate circumstances, and you look, maybe you give the numbers on Steven Williams, and you can turn it around in a minute, and maybe Tuesday night was a turning point for him. They go back to the Rusty C in Atlanta, Russ Chandler Stadium, the return to the scene of the crime 2 years ago, where he hits a walk-off and beats Tech, and Auburn ends up winning and going to the Super Regional and then on to Omaha. And then Steven Williams the other night, it's a 2-run homer and a 2-run double and a 7-3 win at Georgia Tech. It only takes 1 or 2 games to get somebody going, and he's a dangerous hitter. I mean, he's a very capable, very dangerous hitter. Judd Ward's a very capable player, and they've got a good lineup. You mentioned Bliss at the top of the order, and Woley and Miller. I mean, Miller's as good a hitter as there is in the league. I mean, he can hit. His numbers are there. I mean, it's all season long. He's done it every day since February. He's it. And they've got some other guys, Moore and Bryson Ware. I mean, they've got guys that can hit, and they're a good lineup. Their problem has been their bullpen. And the other night they pitched well against Georgia Tech. They pieced it together. They ran Peyton Glavin out as the second pitcher out of the pen. He goes back to his hometown of Atlanta and gets the win. And their bullpen pieced it together, and they've held Georgia Tech to 3 runs on 4 hits on a Tuesday night. That has to be encouraging for them. That's not Vanderbilt. That's not Tennessee. That's not Florida. But still, Georgia Tech's a highly capable team and one of the top teams in the ACC, and a team that people are projecting to go to regionals. That's a good win for Auburn, and that's a momentum builder. Now you come play Alabama, who's 5-7. They're feeling pretty good about themselves, but you got a little momentum coming in. But the deal for this weekend is which bullpen will pitch better than the other one. And Alabama probably has a little bit more, has an advantage. Well, they do have an advantage. Brock Guffey hasn't pitched well all year, but Chase Lee has been lights out. He's in our latest power rankings for pitchers. Hadn't allowed a run, earned or unearned, all year long. Auburn doesn't have that guy. And in a close game, at the end of the game, the advantage in this series to me would be Alabama, because they have the lights out guy that closes, and Auburn does not. And I think Alabama would have the advantage in the bullpen. I think they'd have the advantage playing at home as well. But Auburn is a highly capable team. They could come in here and win 2 games just as easy as they could lose 2 or 3 or whatever. And with that lineup that they have, but if their bullpen, we've been saying this is week 8, week 5 in the SEC, week 9 overall. They can figure it out in the bullpen. They've got a capable lineup that they could make some noise.
I think Brad Bohannon has done a tremendous job since he's taken over that Alabama program.
Well, first of all, they weren't as bad a team as they appeared to be with Mitch Gaspard as coach. And it didn't work there at the end, and he left. And Mitch and I have been friends for since 1995, when Jim Wells brought him to Alabama, and he's doing a tremendous job at Louisiana Tech as an assistant now for a team that quite very well could host a regional. They made a mistake in hiring Greg Goff. They didn't really do their homework. Just didn't, and it was a disaster. and they won, 5 games, and it was a disaster. And Greg Byrne realized it was a disaster and made a change. And he went out and he found Brad Bohannon, who's been in the SEC is pretty much his entire life. He was a lifer at Kentucky with Keith Madison and Jan Weisberg and learned from those guys and John Cohen. And then he moved to Auburn and learned a little bit, well, not a little bit, but learned more under Butch Thompson. And he was ready to make that move. And he's excited to be at Alabama, and Alabama is excited to have him. And they are better. But they still have obstacles here. I don't get into all of that. And it's not like anything illegal or bad. It's just, this is one of the states in the union that doesn't have a lottery, and they don't have lottery scholarships to give like everybody else does. And they're also one of the only states that doesn't waive out-of-state tuition. So he's got 11.7 scholarships to play with, and everybody else has got 20, 25, 30. And it's hard. I mean, when you go in and your deck of cards has 37 and the other guy has 52, he's got a better chance of pulling out 4 aces maybe than you do. And that's just, but he has done a good job. They're better. He feels like they're going to get better. And he's got a legit number 1 guy on the mound, and Auburn's in the same situation. I'm not just saying that for Alabama. Butch Thompson's in the same boat as Alabama's in, and so are these other Division I schools and the D2s and all that. It just don't. The state just won't waive out-of-state tuition like they do in Mississippi and some other states that they can, they can go to school there on in-state tuition money and not have to pay out. And that's huge when you only have 11.7 scholarships. But they are better. They've gotten better, and they're feeling pretty good about themselves right now. They smoked Samford the other night, 19-3, which that's been a hard game for them recently because Casey Dunn's got a good club and has done such a good job there, former Auburn catcher. But they feel pretty good about themselves going into this weekend and the next couple of weeks with Kentucky and Missouri. But they feel pretty good where they are and where they're going.
Let's talk about South Carolina LSU. Any chance that what we saw last weekend was sort of more of a return to what we thought LSU would be? Now, I think that's a tremendously tough matchup. South Carolina is really good. They defend well. They pitch really well. In fact, we probably don't talk enough about Carolina's pitching. The lineup is really solid. Wes Clark is the guy that's gotten the attention, but Brady Allen has been tremendous for them in league play. I think that's a tough series for LSU, but what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pick on Kentucky, but, they went to Kentucky and won 2 out of 3 and scored 27 runs. And, well, this ain't Kentucky coming to Baton Rouge this weekend. This is a really good team. I mean, they're legit on the mound. They got a good bullpen, and they can hit. And their leadoff guys is dynamic. A leadoff hitter as there is in the league, and Brady Allen in center field. He covers the ground in center field, can make unbelievable catches, got a good arm, can hit home runs. You don't see a leadoff guy that can yank them out of the park, but this guy leads their team in home runs in SEC play with 6. And he's a legit factor in their lineup. And then, everybody talks about Wes Clark. Well, they win a lot of games when Wes Clark's 0 for 1 with 2 walks because he's a patient hitter and because Mendham and Andrew Eister and Khalil and, Burgess and guys in the middle and bottom of the order, contribute. I mean, and they hit home runs. I mean, South Carolina's a home run hitting team just like LSU is, but South Carolina's pitching to me is better. I think tonight will be, LSU's got a chance with Marceau anytime he pitches. Labus gives them a chance. They're unsettled about, Saturday's game now, game 3 with who the starter is. And to me, South Carolina's got this is another one of those series where who has the better bullpen? We said Alabama's bullpen was better than Auburn's. I think South Carolina's bullpen's better than LSU's with Brett Carey and Bosnick and some others in the pen that I think that would be where South Carolina could outlast them, weekend. If they got into a little scoring spree, I think South Carolina can hit with LSU. I just think South Carolina's better on the mound.
Yeah, I think that Brett Carey has been super in that long relief role, but Bosnick too, since they moved him, it's been 2 or 3 weeks now, he kind of gives him another kind of guy like that, and have two guys who you can bring in and leverage situations in the middle of the ball game that you know can go 3 or 4 innings or more. I think that's one thing that makes him tough. I don't know if anybody else in the league has two guys like that. Maybe they do, but that's another thing that makes them really tough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, when you got a guy that was a starter. I mean, he's their Saturday. He was not their Saturday guy, Bosnick, or was he the Sunday guy?
He was Bosnick was their Sunday guy. Yeah,
he was their number 3, and they used him in relief on Friday night against Florida, and he ate up a bunch of innings, and they ended up tying the game and then winning the game in 14 innings because of him. And they didn't have to use Brett Carey a lot in that game, so they had Brett Carey for Saturday and Sunday, and they were able to use Bosnick again on Sunday. They started, Sanders, as he's pitched the last couple of Sundays, didn't have a great game last week, but has pitched well for them. And that was a good move by Mark Kingston. Just getting another guy in the rotation, but giving you another guy in the bullpen, to go along with Brett Carey and just eat up innings. And that's what those two guys do. And it's helped them. They've played really well. I think that, they lost a game against Georgia. They lost a game against Missouri last week. I think they've lost the last 2 series opening games. Georgia beat them on Friday, came back to win the next 2. Missouri beat them on Friday, came back to win the next 2. So, and that's supposed to be, where their best guy goes. But that shows you the depth they have. Okay, we lost Friday night. We'll go get Saturday and Sunday because we've got all these other arms in the pen that we can use and we can hit. So it'd be interesting to see, how they match up tonight in Baton Rouge. And, obviously it's another duh moment here, but it's a lot easier to sweep when you win that first game. And they haven't done that the last couple of weeks, but they've played well enough the last week because of the depth in their bullpen, because of Bosnick and Carey, and they've ended up winning both of those series.
I'm trying to decide what the best series of the weekend is. And boy, flip a coin here. Vandy going to Tennessee or Ole Miss going to Mississippi State, Barry?
Yeah, heads or tails on either one of those. I might give the edge to Vanderbilt and Tennessee simply because both teams are ranked in or near the top 5. And they're both 9-3, and they're both leading the Eastern Division and tri-leaders in the SEC overall. And Vanderbilt's coming off a home series loss to Georgia, and Tennessee is. I mean, they would say this is blasphemy to say this because they don't like anything red or crimson, but they are just red hot. I mean, they are legit. They are a good team. This is a really, really good baseball team. They don't wow you when you look at them. You think, wow, you just kind of look at them, you watch them play, but they do everything right. They pound the strike zone. They're fewest walks in the league, most walks on offense. And they have Liam Spence, our number 1 offensive player in our power rankings this week, who has played as well as he's played, and he's hurt. He's been limited because of a hamstring. He's not playing 100% right now. So imagine how good he's going to be when he's 100%. And they've also done this without the services. They've had them, just haven't played well. Max Ferguson and Connor Pavoloni. Well, guess what? Max Ferguson has 7 hits in his last 3 games, and he had 6 RBI the other night against Western Carolina. Oh, is Max Ferguson heating up? If that is, Tennessee is going to be really dangerous. And Vanderbilt's probably not going to like that this weekend because they've played well at home against Florida. They've won all their home series. They've played really well in Knoxville this year. That, to me, that's going to be the series that everybody, keeps an eye on. And you look at it, the last 28 years that they've played, and in most of those years, neither team were good. But recently, Vanderbilt's had the upper hand. But over the last 28 seasons, Vanderbilt has won 42 times. Tennessee has won 41 times. And in the 28 series, Vanderbilt has 14 series wins. Tennessee has 13, and 1 they split, assuming they had a rain out and played only 2 games. So Vanderbilt and Tennessee have played some really close series over the years, and this should be a really dynamite series in Knoxville, excuse me, this weekend. When Vanderbilt goes on the road and tries to take on their in-state rival, who probably has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they hear Vanderbilt, two-time national champion. Vanderbilt gets everybody they want, and they do, and because they're good, because Tim Corbin's a really good coach and a really good recruiter, and they get the good players, and they get probably some of the better players. And Tennessee, probably thinking they're the flagship school in the state, they probably feel a little slighted with that, and they think maybe this might be the year that they can get after Vanderbilt and take the lead in the standings with a series win this weekend. But it'll be tough. It would be hard for me to think that Vanderbilt would lose 2 series in a row, but going to Knoxville for the second week after losing the first one, it wouldn't be an impossible thing to see happen because Tennessee's that good.
Well, 2 things here. Enthusiasm in Knoxville for baseball is at an all-time high, at least in the time that I have followed SEC baseball. I'm doing my second radio appearance in Knoxville later today on this series. I've been exchanging texts with the beat writer up there, which, they don't usually cover baseball in Knoxville, but they are now, and I'm glad they are. Number 2, the ticket prices. Have you seen what these things are going for on StubHub? I mean, people are asking $250 a ticket. It's crazy.
I took a screenshot of that last night, and you say the same thing with your other hard determination was which series was the toughest. They're looking at $250, $300 a piece in Knoxville this weekend, and $300 and $350 a ticket in Starkville. I mean, you look at Vivid Seats and StubHub. You look at all these places. I mean, who's doing this now? How in the world are we scalping college baseball tickets for what's a ticket in Knoxville? $5? I mean, can it be? I mean, I know Alabama charges 10. I don't know what maybe $8 or $10. Let's just say it's $10 to go to an SEC game in Knoxville at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Now you're asking $250. I mean, that's a tremendous markup for college baseball game. And I know the seating capacities are limited, and that plays a role in it as well. But goodness gracious, I mean, you want to go see Ole Miss and Mississippi State one day and Vanderbilt, Tennessee one day, you got to come up with about $600 just to go to the game. It doesn't count driving and eating and staying in a hotel room. That's going to be an expensive weekend, but I think it's awesome. I mean, I think it's just as cool as it can be that, I wouldn't want to be the guy that did it and said I did it, but I'd like to shake the hand of the man or the woman that goes, I paid $350 for this seat. And, to come to the game today and watch Tennessee and Vanderbilt. I'm like, what? What? $350? Are you kidding me? But that's what I'm seeing on Vivid Seat and StubHub and these other ticket outlets. And I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I never thought college baseball would be where it is, to this day, many, many years ago. SEC Network last night ran Thunder and Lightning again, the Palmeiro and Clark story, and I saw some of it. I've seen it a bunch, but I watched a little bit of it again last night just because I enjoy it. And how it kind of like ESPN came to Starkville, and that's kind of how ESPN started with baseball. I mean, they were started in 1979. They had no programming. They were a 24-hour all network station, and they're like, well, we got to put stuff on. And I remember watching games in the 80s and 80, 81. I remember seeing Alabama and Ole Miss play in 81 on ESPN. Some of them were delayed, but I mean, they had to have show programming. And then they started that Sunday night baseball game on ESPN, and, go to Starkville, Mississippi State, in the left field lounge. And, college baseball's come a long way. And from, now being on TV every game, or every game's on the app, to people buying tickets or trying to sell tickets for $250 for a weekend series for a game. That's pretty good. This sport's come a long, long way.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have shared this belief for a long time that there's a bigger audience for college baseball than is perceived. I mean, people say, well, there's no audience, and so we're not going to cover that. Well, how do you know? You haven't tried. And I think more media coverage of things really endears the product to a bigger audience, and we're seeing that now. But going back to the series itself, Barry, Vandy just got walloped by Georgia. last weekend. And the shocker was seeing Kumar Rocker get hit as hard as he did. I think he'll bounce back. But the thing that I'm watching this weekend is who Vanderbilt has in that 3 role and whether they can get 4 or 5 good innings out of a third starter, because if they do, they become excruciatingly tough at that point. But the other big thing is Isaiah Thomas is back for them. And they're still missing a couple of bats, but that's the one I think they could least afford to miss given their alternatives. And so I think that Vanderbilt, while it didn't look so good last week, and I think that there's a couple dynamics that could maybe put them over the edge for that series. We'll see.
Yeah, Thomas coming back is certainly going to help them. And what will happen in Game 3? I know they threw Schultz Tuesday night in the midweek, and I think he pitched well. I think you were there. I think he pitched well. So that'll – and I know they still have some guys that are out offensively, but if they can figure that Sunday guy, and you say figure, I mean, they've got tons of guys, but if they can get that solidified, I think a lot of people feel like, okay, we're going to give them Rocker and Leiter, and we're going to load up, try to beat them on Sunday and not get swept because they may be a little vulnerable on Sunday, but they're going to find that right piece to the puzzle, and it's going to happen, and then they're going to be really dangerous. And I think, this could be that weekend they do that, against a really good Tennessee team, and to go back to your initial statement about, college baseball, and there's a market for it out there. I think there is, and I think that's why we're doing what we're doing here, because you felt like there was a market for college baseball. It was untapped, that people, like it and go, and it just, there was a need for more information on college baseball and give people more and more day-to-day stuff. And I think that was how your idea came about, with this, that we're doing these podcasts every day and these blogs and power rankings and team rankings every day and every week. And I think it's a good sport. I think people like it. And I think with the draft, going from 50 rounds to 5 rounds, and then I think they cut it back, this year it'd be 20, you're going to see more and more really good players playing college baseball. And that's not just at Vanderbilt and Alabama and Fresno State. That's at the D2 level. That's going to be at the D3 level. You're going to see NAIA teams that have really good players, junior college teams. And you're going to have more and more good players playing college baseball and be really good. And we'll just the number of players that are there, and just more players available and more good players that, now go to college. What ESPN put out the stat, I think 56% of the major league opening day rosters were 4-year college guys. And I think it was 65 or 70% that were junior college and 4-year college guys. So, I mean, there you go. That's where they're developing these guys, and the way they're cutting back the minor leagues and cutting out leagues and stuff. I could see Vanderbilt, Alabama, Fresno State, Texas, all these teams, Nebraska's, SECs, ACCs, all these teams becoming feeder programs for Major League Baseball, because college does that now. There's no minor league college. You don't go play minor league college football in Waukegan, Illinois, and play a 4-game, 5-game season in the summer after you played, to get in the NFL draft. There's no minor league football, so they go from there to the NFL or taxi squads or whatever. I can see that happening more and more from college baseball, because we have seen people leave college baseball and go right to the big leagues. And, we had a kid at TCU several years ago that pitched in the College World Series and pitched in the Major League World Series in the same year. Bob Horner, he never played in the minor leagues. He went right from Arizona State to the Atlanta Braves in the 70s. It's been happening for a while. And I think you're going to see that continue to happen now with the advancements of college baseball and the lack of the reduction of the draft. I think that's only going to enhance our game tremendously.
That was Brandon Finnegan at TCU that did that, wasn't it?
That's correct. Thank you for helping me out there.
He's kind of fallen off the map since, but I do remember that. I've just got maybe 15 minutes left, but I want to bring up the Ole Miss pitching situation, because we talked about how Vandy, if it can just find a number 3, that changes the complexion of that team a bit. I see a similar situation at Ole Miss, because Gunnar Hoagland's been great. I mean, absent Rocker and Leiter, he might be your SEC pitcher of the year. That's not going to happen this year unless one of those guys gets hurt, but he's having that type of season. Doug Nikhazy has been out a little bit, but has pitched well when he's been in there. Drew McDaniel has been really effective statistically. Now he walks a lot of guys, and I think that's a concern. When you've got a 15% walk rate and a 23% strikeout rate, no, excuse me, that's fly ball and ground rates. He's got a 9% strikeout rate or walk rate and a 29% strikeout rate. That actually is really good. The ERA is good. I'm just anxious to see how he does in that 3 role, because I think that's a team where I think if you want to say who's got the best lineup 1 to 9, my choice at this point is Ole Miss, but the pitching has been that team's Achilles heel, and again, injuries have been part of that. But I think if he comes in and is a good third starter, I mean, look out, because I think that Ole Miss team takes a step up.
I agree. I think they have a good lineup. I think they've played well most of the season. They have had to battle some injuries. Schottenjay, the leadoff hitter, has missed some significant time with hamstring injury. Baker has been out for them. He's back now playing first base. And, oh, by the way, he drove in 6 the other night in their win over their midweek win. Austin P. Excuse me, I'll get it right in here in a minute. So 14 midweek games in one night. It's hard to remember who played who in these lopsided 7-inning games when they can't stop them in the 7th inning for run rules. But he had a huge game the other night. Is hitting 250, but missed a ton of time. I mean, they've played 33 games and he's only played in 18. So he's back. Elko being out, has hurt them and will hurt them. Can they go to Starkville and do that? But Graham has been really good. McCants has played really well. Justin Bench. Hayden Dunhurst last weekend against Arkansas went 5 for 5 in the first game and got a hit in the first inning in the second game. He starts that series 6 for 6, finishes 7 for 10 with 7 RBI in the doubleheader. So your catcher, he's capable. He's a capable player. So they have offense. You're right. They really do. Elko being out hurts them. Now what can they do on the mound? They pitched better Tuesday, but obviously competition not as good. But I think for Mike Bianco and what he's looking at going into Mississippi State is he still remembers those 17 walks Sunday against Arkansas, and that can't happen. And it's probably a one-time thing, obviously, but you got to cut down on the walks. You can't, you just can't walk 17 in a SEC game and expect to win, especially when you hit a couple and they had 13 or 14 hits and you end up got 30 some base runners. It just makes it really difficult. But Nikhazy and Hogland are 6-2 combined. Both have sub 2.6 ERAs. Hogland's I think he's second or third in the league in strikeouts with 78, and Nikhazy, who's missed 2 starts, has 47. So you're talking about they got 120 some strikeouts and they've only given up 51 hits in 78 innings. So, I mean, those 2 guys have been getting it done. And then, hey, don't forget about Taylor Broadway, who's made 13 appearances this year, has a 3.10 ERA. He's given up a couple of runs, but he's 31 strikeouts and 4 walks. But his 13 appearances, he's got 3 wins and 8 saves. So they've made the most out of him. He's factored in 11 wins in the 13 games he's pitched in. He's had a hand in those, and that's a huge piece out of the bullpen, for him. To me right now, it'd be Taylor Broadway and Kevin Kopps. If they picked a relief pitcher of the year in this league, those 2 guys would be running away with it right now.
Landon Sims would like a word here.
He would.
So would Chase
Lee. Yeah, but I think Lee is 4-0 with 4 saves, so he's got 8 of Alabama's 20 wins. I think Kopps has got 9 of Arkansas's 20-some wins, but he's got 5 or 6 of their 9 SEC wins too. So you go look at that, and Landon Sims has had good numbers. I mean, strikeouts, but I don't know that he has the wins and the saves and stuff to go with it. I still subscribe to the theory, if you're a pitcher, your one statistic is how many wins you have. Where it's, you can say, well, he's, he only comes in to get 2 outs a game, okay, that's his job. But, if you're a pitcher and you got 20 innings and but you don't have any wins, or like Dylan Smith, he's pitched really well for Alabama, but he has no wins. This guy right here is a factor in the game. 11, he's been responsible for pitched in 11 wins for Ole Miss with 8 saves and 3 wins. So he's responsible for 11 of their 25 wins. That's almost half. I mean, that's 44% of their wins. So, but there are other relief pitchers, great relievers in the game. We're loaded with them in the SEC, but those two are at or near the top for sure.
I'm searching my inbox in the SEC site and I'm looking for pitching matchups. I can't find them. I assume State's going McLeod, Fristow, and Bednar in some order this weekend.
I would think so. Yeah, those usually don't come out till after lunch. I usually don't get those till about 1 o'clock or after. But I would assume it would be McLeod, Bednar, Fristow in that order. We know Ole Miss is certainly check Twitter and see if they put anything up, for their deal, with Mississippi State. But I would think that would be the pitching order for them this weekend against Ole Miss at home.
I guess the next most interesting series, probably Kentucky at Georgia, because we just saw Georgia get hot to an extent that we had not seen all year. Kentucky, to me, starting to look like that record, a product of an easy schedule. But this is an opportunity for Kentucky, I guess, to prove that it's more than just that, and an opportunity for Georgia to really continue the momentum that it got in Nashville last week and really start taking big steps towards not just an NCAA bid, but maybe an outside shot to host, Barry.
Yeah, I think it's a big series for Georgia at home. Huge momentum swing last week going to Nashville, and they thumped Vanderbilt. I mean, you were there. I mean, I saw
it looked decisive on the field. Now, I don't think if they play that series again, it plays out that way. But being in that ballpark, I mean, if you come in and you know nothing of the teams, you say one of these teams is number one in the country, you walk away convinced it's Georgia, just if that's all you know.
You do. And you look at the 2 Georgia wins, and it's 23-3. I mean, they're not close. And the one game that Vanderbilt won, they needed was it Noland or Bulger that hit the 3-run homer in the 8th inning and gave Vanderbilt the win in that game. And then that game changes if that's not a 3-run homer, and Georgia's looking to sweep. And so, but the 2 games they won are 23-3. Georgia outscored them and really played very well and looked really good, hitting a bunch of home runs, 7 in the opener, 9 overall. But so you're thinking Georgia's got the momentum, and Kentucky, as you said, a product of Missouri, Auburn, and going 5-1, and then going 1-5 against Mississippi State and LSU. But as our old buddy Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. These Wildcats have figured it out in Athens over the years. They won the last 4 trips to Foley Field. They've won the last 4 series at Foley Field, and they've beaten Georgia 6 of the last 9 series overall. Georgia hadn't beaten Kentucky at Foley Field in a series since 2010. So Georgia's got that going for them. They don't have a lot of good history with the Wildcats at home for some reason or another. Kentucky plays really well in Athens, and we'll see how that goes this weekend. I don't think that trend will continue. I do think Georgia will win this series against Kentucky, but history is on Kentucky's side. They've had a lot of success at Foley Field recently.
We haven't talked a lot about Kentucky, and the reason really, I just don't think we've had much to evaluate. I keep waiting to see Kentucky play good teams and see it do well. When it has, it is kind of faltered. And just to wit, Kentucky, the number 95 strength of schedule, I think, according to RPI right now. That may have changed. That was yesterday, and some midweek games may have changed that a bit. But Kentucky in that range. But I will tell you a couple things about the Cats. The pitching has gotten better. With Cole Stupp and Mason Hazelwood, those guys are capable of throwing well. Stupp is really ground ball heavy, which is going to help you when you go into Foley Field, where I've seen many a game where the wind turns that into a pinball game at times. So I don't think that Kentucky wins this series, but I will say we've talked about how it's got some bats, and you've seen the arms get better. And if they get good performances from those 2 guys, then I think Kentucky's got a shot.
Well, they do, and obviously got some offense. Schultz and Collette, Ritter at shortstop's played really well lately, but they can, Strupp can pitch. Hagenau's been fairly good, on the mound. Bullpen has been decent at times for them, but Georgia's got momentum. Really good offense. The Tate brothers, Riley King. It'd be interesting to see if McAllister's back this weekend. He's been out a couple of weeks for them. He's played really well. Parks Harbor's played really well at third base and hit the ball pretty good for them. They have a chance. Obviously, history being on their side, and we just said with winning the last 4 series in Athens. But I'm just not quite sure they're going to get that 5th one in a row this weekend when they go to Georgia, because Georgia's played really, really well last week at Vanderbilt, and I think they played well in the midweek against Georgia State, and I think they're going to keep that momentum this weekend.
By the way, Connor Tate put himself in player of the year discussion for what he did at Vandy last week. That kid really can hit the ball. He's big. He's physical. I think it's a little bit harder for a right fielder to win it, in my mind, because that's not a higher impact defensive position. So I think if you're going to play a corner outfield spot, you've really got to be head and shoulders above everybody else. But boy, the way he hit the ball, I just thought he looked great all weekend.
He did, and he's played pretty well all year long. He's been one of their top hitters, and has power and just he looks the part. Big physical specimen, in the lineup and in the outfield. You hear coaches say he looks like an SEC baseball player, and this guy looks like an SEC baseball player. It's what you'd think one would look at like when he jumps off the bus. You go, that guy plays baseball, as an SEC player. I mean, you can just tell that. And, you've got guys around him that can help him and support him, a good supporting cast. And it's a really good lineup. Blaylock being in there, transfer from Vanderbilt, he being in there, and, the guys can hit. I mean, they got a decent lineup that can hit the ball, and they have gotten momentum now the last week for sure. So now we'll see if they can build on that momentum over the next few weeks and, make their run, maybe into postseason, obviously, but maybe see if they can, scoot up high enough in the power rankings and the RPIs to maybe be a host at Foley Field. Good atmosphere there. It's a great venue for college baseball, and should be fun this weekend when they play Kentucky.
Just got a couple minutes left, so I want to hit 2 series quickly. Florida's in a pickle, Barry, because if it wants to host, it's got to get that RPI up. It's 31. The good news is if you're trying to establish some momentum and get some confidence, I think playing Missouri at home is what you want. The bad news, you can win 3 games and maybe see your RPI drop. So Florida, I think, really has to almost sweep this weekend to have any chance of hosting, because the alternative might put that RPI so low with going to Auburn next weekend that it's going to start to put hosting out of reach, barring almost running the table.
Yeah, you look at them. First thing you see with Florida this week is winning the game Tuesday night at home against Florida State. That was huge. I mean, that's a huge win. Team that hammered them back on March 16th, 10-2. Just dominated Florida in every phase of the game. And then they come to Gainesville Tuesday night, and Kendrick Caliello hits the walk-off home run, and Florida wins 3-2 and avenges a loss. And, now instead of being 1-3 against Miami and Florida this year, now you're 2-3. Certainly not where they've been over the years, because Kevin O'Sullivan has dominated those 2 teams like no other. But that was a huge win for Florida midweek, because Florida State's one of the upper echelon teams in the ACC. Good home win over a good RPI team, and gives you a little momentum after, not playing well in Knoxville this weekend. Well, they played well, they just didn't win. And then having Missouri coming in, chance to sweep, 4-game winning streak, get to 9-6 in the league, and I think Florida has to be. Win 3 games this weekend. It is interesting that in 2017, Florida was 6-6 through 12 games, and ended up going 15-3 down the stretch and won the SEC title. So it has been done. It has been done by the Gators, and it has been done in the last 4 or 5 years. So history's on their side that they've been able to do that before, and they've swept the last 4 series with Missouri in Gainesville, or swept the last 4 series and 5 of the 7 overall, and they've swept every series in Gainesville. So they have a history of beating Missouri, and this would be a huge weekend for them if they can sweep, get to 9-6, and get them on the road back to regional conversations.
Arkansas in a similar spot to where if you lose a game at home to Texas A&M, that really hurts the RPI, though Arkansas has got a pretty good lead there in regards to being number one. So I don't think it's a killer if Arkansas were to drop a game. But the thing that I would like to see with the Razorbacks is just getting better starting pitching. I mean, I think their lineup is really good. They've got a lot of nice arms. I don't know if they got a lot of great ones. I think if you're Arkansas and you intend on winning a national title, which this club is capable of doing, I think this is an opportunity to really start to shore up your starting pitching and try to get guys 5 or 6 quality innings. And that's one thing that I'll be watching, because I think the longer Arkansas goes without being able to do that, I'm not saying they're not an Omaha level team, but that's the reason you and I have just kind of not been sold on them quite as much. We think they're a great team, but it's that pitching component where everybody else in the league seems to have those elite arms. And with them, at least in terms of starting pitching, it's just not there. So that's kind of what I'm watching for when A&M goes to Fayetteville this weekend, Barry.
Yeah, to me, I think they are the best offense in the West. Just 1 through 9, they hit. I mean, I know they played Arkansas Pine Bluff yesterday. They hit 8 home runs yesterday. 4 guys hit 2 home runs each, which is really strange. You don't see that very often, multiple homers from 4 guys in one game. And, with Wallace, Christian Franklin, Brady Slavens, and Robert Moore, and Casey Opitz, I mean, just up and down their lineup, they can hit. And just kind of holding them back a little bit has been their pitching staff. Not great starting pitching from Pallette, from Zebulon Vermillion, Lyle Lockhart, but their bullpen with Jackson Wiggins and Kevin Kopps has been as good as anybody's. Now, they've had some issues in the middle, and Connor Nolan has been hurt. This is a guy that was a starter for them this year, and is a guy that's been a starter for them in the past. I watched their game yesterday against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and they talked about him. They think they might have him back next week, maybe the next, get him back in their rotation, maybe as a starter, maybe in the bullpen, but he's a veteran arm. What I think, was it 2017 or 18, one of those years, they had a graphic on him yesterday. Now I don't remember which year, but he started and won a game in the SEC in football and baseball, and he started and won a game in the College World Series. So this guy's got experience, and if they can get him back, I think that will certainly help their rotation. And I don't see them having any trouble with the Aggies this weekend. 2 former Southwest Conference rivals. I don't see that being a real issue for them, because I think their offense is really good, and I think that's where this weekend they will win, because they will score a lot of runs against the Aggies pitching staff.
Yeah, and I want to just clarify something on Arkansas. I'm looking down the list of their top 7 or 8 guys in terms of innings pitched. And here are the players with the base runners per innings pitched they're giving up. Lockhart, 1.38. Vermillion, 1.24. Pallette, 1.54. Wicklander, 1.48. Kopps, 1.07. Of course, he's been terrific. Bolden, 1.58. Ramage, 1.76. Caden Monk, 1.29. You really want those numbers in the 1.1s or 1.2s. And with the exception of a couple of guys, that's just not a staff that's getting it done. That's my concern for them, is if you keep allowing a lot of base runners, eventually that comes home to bite you. And I don't want to say Arkansas is not deserving of number one, because I think resume right now It definitely is. And we had Arkansas number one in our power rankings for that reason. But if people listen to this podcast and think, well, you're not giving Arkansas enough credit or whatever, that exactly is the reason for our concern.
Yeah, the base runners, the walks, just overall inconsistent. And I think Dave Van Horn would say that. They've got guys that can get the job done. I mean, Kevin Kopps, he's got 5 wins and 4 saves. He's responsible for 60 or 5 wins and 4 saves. So he's got responsible for 9 of their 28 wins, but he's responsible for 5 or 6 of their 9 SEC wins. Wicklander has pitched, well, although his hits per inning is 30 hits in 29 innings, that's too much. Vermillion, 27 hits and 12 walks in 33 innings. Lockhart, 42 walks and hits combined in 34 innings. I mean, you're just looking at these numbers and you're right. It's concerning. 40, Caleb Bolden, 30 hits and walks in 22 innings. Seems like everybody's walks and hits added together are more than their innings pitched. And you wonder if that's going to, how long is that going to hold? How long can they get by with that? I mentioned Wiggins, 11 appearances. He's got 10 hits and 8 walks in 10 innings, but he's got 3 wins and 4 saves, but a 6.10 ERA. And then Ramage is 7.58 ERA, and he's got 32 hits and walks in 19 innings. And so you just look at that and, are they going to be able to survive with those numbers, particularly as they get into the back half of the schedule, because their back half of the schedule is Eastern Division heavy, and it's all against the really good Eastern Division teams.
Well, gentlemen, I've got to run. So with that, I'll end the podcast. Thank you both for your contributions today. Remember to check out our work at southeastern14.com. Right now, all that's free. You can see our power rankings for position players, for pitchers, for the league as the whole. You can check out our updates that Barry brings every night. You can check out our basketball content as we have something to write about. And of course, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Get that wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us some kind words behind. That helps us move up the ratings. But anyway, for Blake Lovell and Barry Allen, I'm Chris Leedy, host of the 14. We'll see you again on Friday with another episode of our show.